by Dr. Shaminas of Department of English, Rashi Tandon Mahila Mahavidyalaya, University of Allahabad, is here before you to present Paper 2, Module 18, Ismat Chughtai, Grand Dame of Urdu Short Story, which has been written by Professor Sami Rafiq, Department of English, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Ismat Chughtai, the Urdu short story writer, playwright, essayist, critic and filmmaker, was a trailblazer who made women writing a new genre in Urdu literature. She was born in 1911 in Badaयूं in Uttar Pradesh. Like Alice Munro, the present-day Nobel laureate who injected the short story with a new life in the English-speaking world, Ismat too revived the Urdu short story. A close comparison between the two women writers would reveal a deep and intimate involvement with the female psyche and domestic sphere. Ismat may not have been a Nobel laureate, but she earned a place of distinction with a huge following of readers, critics, admirers, and bitter opponents till date. In the recent time, her works are also being translated into English and are being taught globally. It is no wonder then that Ismat came to be known as the grand dame of the Urdu short story. In fact, she happens to be one of the four pillars of the foundation of the Urdu short story, the other three being Saadat Hasan Manto, Munshi Premchand and Kishan Chandra. Owing to her bold style of writing and her commitment to expressing the miserable state of Muslim women, she became a leading light of the progressive writers movement. Though she had a strong sympathy with communism, she always kept far away from ideologies of any kind. As a writer, she always remained true to herself and did not follow any fashion or fate. Her essay, Pompous Darling, was very critical of Kurratuddin Haidar's fascination with the West and the Indian upper class. The progressive writer movement began with the publication of Angare, a collection of short stories by Ahmad Ali, Sajjad Zahir, Rashid Jahan and Mahmuduz Zafar in 1932, which was followed by a ban on it by the British government in 1933. The contribution of these writers are considered some of the finest pieces to Urdu literature. In Ismat's own words, I quote, "The group of progressive with whom I got involved was a group of undisciplined, revolutionary, carefree, happy-go-lucky and very interesting people. I remember spending very exciting moments with the company of these outspoken, candid, crazy but intelligent people. I have never seriously taken it to be my mission to reform society and eliminate the problem of humanity. But I was greatly influenced by the slogans of the Communist Party as they matched my own independent, unbridged and revolutionary style of thinking." She was a writer who changed how Muslim women wrote, and Laila Kazmi noted in her essay published in Dawn, I quote, "Coming back to literature before Ismat, the main writing available for Indian Muslim women was a 2-volume novel called Gudar Ka Phool, published in 1905 under the name of Walida Afzal Ali, meaning mother of Afzal Ali. Being a woman, the author could not publish it under her own name of that time. Walida Afzal Ali was the art of Kurratuddin Haidar. The novel is full of cultural description, ceremonies, ritual. That was the only novel given to women when they got married," said Miss Naqvi. After that, there were other novels for women which mainly stressed the role of good Muslim women, how they should behave, how they should think and talk. Most of these novels were written by men." Unquote. Family life. Ismat Chughtai was born in a traditional Muslim household, the 9th of 10th sibling. Her struggle and angst as being one of the youngest in the household, and that too a girl who was supposed to kowtow to all rules, be they reasonable or not, must have led her to become a rebel. Being part of a large family of cousins, uncles, and aunt helped her to develop and hone her skill, powers of observation, and wit. For as she recounts in her memoir, there was never a dull moment for her writing in her. It would not be out of place to mention the influence of her brother Azim Beg Chughtai on her and her art, beside other cousins and servants around the household. In her essay Dozaki, written as her tribute to her brother, she mentions how she was influenced by his writing, telling, and biting satires. A voracious leader, she was a voracious reader from her childhood and read everything she could lay her hands on, whether it was woman writing or treatise on Islam. In her own words, I quote, I read Charles Dickens, David Copperfield, Oliver Twist, and Gorky's mother, and all them plucked me from the sky and threw me down to earth. I read Chekhov, Emile Zola, Gogol, Dostoevsky, Maupassant, and all the castle of one's dream came crashing down. The Muslim woman writer of her time who impressed her most was Rashid Jahan. Rashid Jahan was the eldest child of Sheikh Abdullah and Begum Wahid Jahan. Sheikh Abdullah established the Women's College at Aligarh, and both he and his wife were instrumental in bringing Muslim girls out of their stifling domestic environment and take them towards education and empowerment. Being outspoken, bold, and direct herself, the bold and expressive writing of Rashid Jahan impressed her the most. She had read the controversial volume of fiction titled Angare on the Sly, which included a story and a play by Rashid Jahan. But Ismat had to encounter numerous difficulties as she did not want to live in the mold of the traditional submissive Muslim girl. When the family shifted to Sambhar in Rajasthan, Ismat recounted the stifling atmosphere of the place. While her cousin Nayyar had enough books for her class 8th course, Ismat, who had the course of 9th and 10th, felt the acute shortage of reading material. She recounts devouring the magazine Tehzeeb-e-Nizwan with a hunger, and especially the romantic stories by Hijab Imtiaz Ali. In her unfinished autobiography, The Paper Attire, Kagaz Hai Pairhan, she mentioned her passion for reading. I quote, they were tattered, swollen, and stuck with moisture, old copies of Tehzeeb-e-Nizwan, Sahili, Ishmat, and Maghzan. Also works of Maulvi Nazir Ahmad and Allama Rashidul Khair, Nayyar, and I fell on them like a crazed lunatic. Nayyar slept early, but I would read till the oil in the lantern was exhausted. Then I would go out on the terrace and read in the moonlight. The moon in Rajasthan is extremely bright. My already weak eyesight worsened. I read everything like a glutton and was left empty handed again. Her struggle for an education. Ismat saw much sufferings and suppression in the lives of the women around her, and she realized early on the importance of a good education for women. From very early in her life, Ismat noted the blatant injustice and suppression of women. She found that women were just objects in marriage who had no voice or identity of their own. It was the agony and irony of a woman's life that she highlighted in her stories again and again. She mentioned in her memoir how she was affected by the narration of the events of Karbala at a majlis. She was thrown out of the gathering because she questioned again and again why little Ali Asgar was shot in the throat with an arrow. After all, according to her, he was just a baby. Nobody appreciated her sensitivity and her pain. She was so overwhelmed by this event that she would feel thorns in her throat whenever she witnessed injustice or cruelty. When she was born, her older sister were already married and settled, and in the words of her mother, were good homemakers. According to her mother, a woman to survive in the male dominated world had to have guile, patience, and intelligence. She also needed to be submissive and forgiving and tolerate his injustice with a bowed head and tearful eyes. Ishmat's response was, "But I had spent my life with brother and had sown to surpass them. I found femininity a form of hypocrisy, this play of dependence, a pretense, and all the importance of patience and acceptance, nothing but humbug." She was so insistent about pursuing a higher education that her unyielding parent had to finally yield. Her marriage was almost fixed, but she hatched a clever little plan with her cousin Jugnu, to whom she had once been engaged. She asked Jugnu to rescue her on the pretext of marrying her so that she would be rid of the current proposal. The plan worked, and Ishmat insisted on continuing her education. She earned her bachelor degree from Isabella Thoban College, Lucknow, and her teacher's training from Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Between 1939 to 41, she taught at Rajmahal Girls' School at Jodhpur. She also became inspector at school at Bombay. When they finally permitted her to leave for higher education studies in Aligarh, her father, giving in to her wishes, sounded more like desertion than support. Ishmat recounted those parting words with a stab of pain in her memoir in paper attire thus. Then he handed me a small booklet. "This is a passbook. You can, with your signature, withdraw money from the post office. It has 6,000 rupees. You can consider this your dowry or your right. We now absolve ourselves from your responsibility." I stood there stunned, holding the booklet. "Beside this, I have made over one house in Agra to you. Rent it or sell it. Your decision." I broke down weeping. It was like the boatman having seated me in the boat, giving me the oars, had left me to my fate. Unquote. Development as a writer. In the words of Tahira Naqvi in her article, Ismat Chughtai, a tribute, she writes, "She was a writer, and a writer one at that, when women were discouraged for involving themselves in intellectual pursuit. She was greatly influenced by her brother, Mirza Azim Beg Chughtai, who was already established as a writer when Ishmat was just starting out. He was her mentor and guide and helped him give direction to her writing. She was writing stories in her teens in imitation of Hijab Imtiaz Ali, a popular writer, which she hid away for fear of censorship. Reading and writing helped her develop her personality and skill as a writer, and in her own words, I quote, "I always felt the same joy in writing as reading. I have severed and overcome problems through writing. So many times I have burdened my heart and loaded it again with writing. This pen has given me bread. It has been a sympathizer and in lonely times a talking friend. In its presence, I have never felt isolated. With this magic wand in hand, I can summon anyone, and when they appear, I can say anything to them, make them laugh, cry, or burn them cinder, and if I will, crush them to dust and toss it to nothingness. Her essay Dozaki, a tribute to her brother Mirza Azim Beg Chughtai, received undue criticism because of its extremely honest portrayal of her sick sibling. But on a close reading, it reveals her acknowledgement to him for her writing and her admiration for her brother. Her first two collections of stories, Kaliyan and Chote, were published during his lifetime. Two events in her life proved crucial in the development of her literary genius: her involvement with the progressive writers movement and the reception of her story Lihaf quilt. Her short story Lihaf was a turning point in her writing career and made her the target of much criticism and brickbats. But it also placed her on a platform where no other woman writer in India had treaded so far. In her story Lihaf quilt, Ismat has touched a literary domain that was taboo in those times. She faced the ire of the respectable middle class, and people from the religious circle had to defend herself in a court case in Lahore. She was aware also there was a certain truth and sincerity in her short story Lihaf, which was duly rewarded when she met the woman who had inspired to write that story. I quote, "I was visiting Aligarh after a long gap. The thought of the lady on whom the story Lihaf was based gave me goosebumps. Well-wisher had informed her that the story was about her. She was present at a dinner party thrown by a relative, staring at me from across the room with her large, deep eyes, and the floor seems to recede from under my feet. Then her whole face lit up, and blossoming like a flower, she pushed her way through the crowd and reaching me, held me to her heart. Then she took me aside and gushed, 'You know, I had taken khula and married again. Mashallah, I now have a beautiful son.' Lihaf was published in the year 1942 in the Urdu literary journal Adab-e-Latif, a literary magazine published from Lahore. Themed on female homosexuality was the short story brought Ismat both fame and notoriety. It depicted two females, a married woman unloved by her husband and a maid. Ismat became an object of criticism, probably because of her gender. The stereotype did not allow a woman writer to write about homosexuality in such an explicit and overtly manner. She faced allegation for obscenity and was summoned to the court for Lihaf, but she successfully defended herself and won the case. Her ideas on religion and secularism: she was aware that communal disturbance and disharmony were the creation of political powers rather than of the people themselves. And to quote her from paper attire, I quote, "The most profitable profession of the political world is the business of God. Defeat accosted in politics are washed with the bloods of the innocent. People are forced to fight like dogs to prove their worth." Hindu-Muslim unity was what she believed. Ismat's perception of the warp and weft of Indian life, in which Hindus and Muslims are just different strands, has been brought out sensitively in paper attire. Thus, I quote, "I am a Muslim. Idol worship is a sin, but mythology is a heritage of my country. It contains centuries of culture and philosophy. Faith is one thing, and the culture of a country something totally different. It belongs to me, just as the earth, sun, and water of this land is mine. If I play holy or light oil lamps on Diwali, would my faith be threatened? Is my belief and faith so weak, so incomplete, that my admiration for an idol would shatter it to smithereens? 'Through the status of Muslim women, Though the status of Muslim women is a major theme in her works, other issues like Hindu Muslim unity, partition, and Muslim society and interrelation at family level are also there. Many of the ideas for this story were culled from issues of her time. Ishmat was not rigid about religion and she defined it in a very flexible way. She had a bold and robust style of writing. Her works were rich in cultural idioms, specifically of women, irrespective of class, status, or religion. Her language was the language of women, which channelized emotion, impulse, and subliminal desires. In the words of Sukriti Paul Kumar, Ishmat's style owed much to her experience in her own family. She says, Ishmat used her own lived experience, her own language and characters from her own family to fearlessly unravel a world behind the veil, so far totally silent and absent from Urdu fiction, being dominated as it was by male writers with the energy and dynamism of a crusader. As a feminist writer, she was a writer who changed how Muslim women wrote in India by writing about the psychological, social, and sexual problem faced by women much before the term feminism had reached the Indian subcontinent. Women of the 18th and 19th century were required to be obedient and submissive homemakers. From very early in her life, Ishmat noted the notorious injustice and suppression of women. She found that women were just objects in marriage who had no choice or identity of their own. Chughtai very boldly approached the subject of female sexuality, feminine sensibility, and emotion, pointing out the social ills of a male dominated society. She wrote about women belonging to the underprivileged and middle class Muslim families of Uttar Pradesh, the place she was brought up in. Major works. Her two major collections of short story beside other are Kaliyan, Birds, and Chote Wounds. Her two famous and critically acclaimed novels are Tehri Lakir, Crooked Line, and Saudai, The Madman. Her famous novella are Ziddi, The Stubborn One, Dil Ki Dunya, The World of the Heart, and Masuma. She also wrote several collections of essays and play. The most celebrated of her works is Lihaf, The Quilt, a short story published in 1942. Foray into the world of film. She wrote script in collaboration with her husband Shahid Latif. Along with her husband, she directed and wrote 12 films. Some of them are Junoon, My Dream, Garam Hawa, Jawab Aayega, Sone Ki Chidiya, Fareb, Arzu, and Ziddi. Adaptation. Ishmat's controversial short story Lihaf has been adapted to theatre by Nasiruddin Shah along with Manto, Ismat Hazir Hain. The adaptation of 4 stories directed by him. It was also adapted to a short story by the same name directed by Rohan Sonawane. Danish Iqbal adapted her story Mughal Bachcha for stage and also wrote a stage play depicting the love-hate relationship between Ismat Chughtai and Shadat Hassan Manto. She has received various awards and prizes for her remarkable works. In 1974, she received Ghalib Award for Urdu drama Tehri Lakir. In 1975, she won Filmfare Best Story Award for her film Garam Hawa with Kaifi Azmi. In 1982, she bagged Soviet Land Nehru Award for her contribution to Urdu literature, and in 1990 she received Iqbal Award from Rajasthan Urdu Academy for the year 1989. So she is a great writer and she will always be remembered in the Indian literature.